Hello everyone, Rager Blade Mango here. By the time you are listening to this, it will be one day before God of War Ragnarok releases. Very exciting times. I am, despite all the shit that I've talked about PlayStation rightfully over the last few years, I am excited to get my hands on God of War Ragnarok. I've been looking forward to it for a while, probably, since the end of God of War 2018. So I'm happy that it's finally here, and of course I'll be playing it, I'll be platinuming it, I'll talk about it on the channel. I'm very excited to get my hands on it. But before we get to God of War Ragnarok, I wanted to give God of War 2018 one final look and just talk about it, reflect on it. Because I actually went back in April and did a full, fresh playthrough of it. Because it'd been a few years since I touched it, and they released that 60 frames patch, I think earlier this year or late last year. And I realized too, when I went back and looked at my trophies for the game, that I didn't have the platinum. And I thought, oh, okay, well, let's fix that. So I went back in April, and I did a full playthrough of it, and I got the platinum. I did everything. I hunted for all those stupid Odin's Ravens. I beat all the Valkyries. I did all the side quests. I did everything in that game. So I wanted to just talk about where I stand on the game, where I think they could improve for Ragnarok, where I don't think they're going to improve for Ragnarok. So the first thing I want to say about God of War is that, and this might be, well, not might, it is a pretty controversial opinion. I don't think God of War is a really great game. I think it's very good. I think it comes very close to being great. And I think if you were to if it had just released with the campaign and didn't have things like the dumb stat building or the RPG light mechanics, I think it would be among my top 5 PlayStation games, or at least in the PS4 generation. But when you take into account then the stuff that you do outside of the campaign, like the side quests and navigating the map, navigating the world, the dumb RPG light mechanic, the boring collectibles, the really awkward way Kratos kind of navigates the environment in some cases thanks to its hardware limitations, that's when I start to go, I'm not gonna go there yet with the great when taking God of War overall as a package. But I still really like it. I think there are a number of things in God of War that are exceptional. I think the writing for the most part is great. I think the performances across the board are all outstanding. The visuals are top tier stuff from Sony Santa Monica. They have a number of extraordinarily talented artists and graphics designers and just everything having to do with the overall presentation of the game. I think the story is extremely compelling. This is one of those rare games that ends with on its own, it has a really satisfying conclusion, and then does a masterful job of setting up the next game and teasing what's to come. And normally I think so many games or so many movies don't follow through on being satisfying as a standalone thing and just want to focus on hyping up the next thing. I find that extremely annoying. But God of War, I don't think did that. I think God of War, it ends the story of Kratos and Atreus bringing Faye's ashes to the realm of the giants and spreading her ashes into the mountains, and I think it ends that perfectly and really emotionally satisfying. And then it brings in the things like, Atreus is Loki. The giants wanted to name him Loki, and the fact that Thor and Odin are going to be in Ragnarok and all that, and it's like, oh my god, I can't wait. So I think as far as storytelling, it's mostly masterful. I think it's fantastic. I think the secret sauce to God of War Ragnarok, God of War 2018 though, maybe with Ragnarök as well, is the score from Bear McCreary. I think that is one of the big stars, maybe the most important element of God of War, because I am somebody who firmly believes that music is an essential part of art. Any kind of visual, artistic medium, where it's movies or TV shows or video games, something like that. I think music is so essential. I think so many people forget that music can be the deal breaker when it comes to selling you on the emotions of a scene, even where the writing fails. My go-to example is always Final Fantasy 15, where I think the writing in that game is fucking lousy, but I think the score by Yoko Shimomura and the other co-composers is so extraordinary that it sells me on what's going on more than the actual writing does in some cases. And I think Bear McCreary's score here is one of the very best I've heard probably ever as far as video games. There are so many amazing, memorable tracks in this soundtrack, and you can just go and listen to it on its own and still be floored by how good it is. I mean, my God, even the main theme with Kratos, that's iconic by now. There's the track of Faye, the Memories of Mother. It's just amazing. The track that really sold me on the game itself when I first got it is this little bit of music called Ashes that plays when they're cremating Faye's body in the beginning. And when Kratos, when he tells, find your way home, Faye, you're free. And then he picks up her body to take her to the pyre. And you hear just the singer in that bit of that track start to just like do her thing. And it just, holy shit. Like it really does an outstanding job of putting you in the headspace of this world and these characters. And that is something that music does better than anything else. Music can just, even if you go to listen to it on its own, a really great soundtrack tells the story in the music, in the notes, and the melodies. And I think the God of War and Bear McCreary just knocked it out of the park so hard with this one soundtrack. That's all the stuff that I really like about God of War. The things that I'm not really crazy about are things like environmental navigation. I think the map is terrible. I don't really like the side quests. I'm not crazy about the RPG-like mechanics. The big thing that I want to focus on that I know is going to be a holdover for Ragnarök is this one-shot camera that they have, which I know people really like these one-shot cameras. I know it is impressive that a whole game or a whole movie can be told in a single take and it flows. I get it. I get it. I get why people like it, but for me personally, it doesn't do a whole lot except in specific situations. Or there has to be a reason why they're doing this. I think God of War, the first one, if you're just focusing on the story, okay, it's impressive. It's good the way they do it. And that it's a unique way to do God of War after years of the cinematic, typical camera angles and stuff like that. It makes it feel more, personal, and you're trapped in the situation with Kratos, with Atreus. You have to be around them when there's this awkward silence between the two, or when they argue and then they have to kind of still be around each other. There's no cutting away from that. And I think in that case, I think it works. I think it's really cool the way they do that. My issue with it, though, comes into the form of when you have to start making a game around it. When you have to start thinking about the player experience around it, and sustaining this one-shot camera, even when you're away from the story and doing collectibles hunting and side quests, because that's when my issue with it starts to come into play. Because at that point, that's when they have to go, well, we can't just do a loading screen, we can't cut away to certain things, we have to limit how the fast travel works. And I don't like that approach when it comes to the gameplay. When it comes to things outside of the story, when you're going around hunting for collectibles, when you're going around doing side quests, that's when the process becomes a lot more tedious. When you have to find a specific fast travel point, and then you have to go into it, and you have to walk inside the World Tree Hub thing for a while, and then you go walk out the door, and then you gotta walk to another area in order to climb a rope or climb a ladder to get it's just doing things in this game, it takes longer than I feel like it needs to. And again, I get the one-shot camera when it comes to the story. To me, it makes sense, it's impressive, but when it starts impacting my enjoyment of things outside of the main campaign, when I'm trying to go for 100% completion, that annoys me. That's when I start to have problems with the game. And that's when I start to go, oh my god, can we just make this snappier? Can we just get this over with? Because it just really limits exploration, and it makes backtracking to places in order to get collectibles or do the Valkyrie stuff way more tedious and way longer than it needs to. And another thing that plays into it as well is I don't think it combines very well with Kratos' overall lack of, like, severe toning down of mobility in God of War, because, you know, in God of War, the old games, he can jump, he can scale enormous distances because he's a demigod, but in an effort to make him feel more grounded, to scale him back down, they made it so Kratos can't jump, Kratos can't swim around various puzzles and objects in order to get to things that are literally just like a foot away from him, that is blocked by like a gate. There's one puzzle I remember in particular where you go to this island in order to, it's one of the bell puzzles that you have to open the chest for, and I remember that you had to do one part of the puzzle on one side of the island, and then you have to take the boat, take it all the way around to the other side of the island, and then do another thing on there so it holds up a certain portion so you do it. And I'm like, okay, Kratos, my man, there's a short little gate that separates the two land masses. And I know Kratos could very easily swim around it, but he can't in God of War. And I understand that these games require a certain suspension of disbelief. I understand it's like, okay, well, he can't jump in this game. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of sort of okay with that. It's whatever to me. But when I start to see things like that, when it starts to hinder my enjoyment of the game, this navigation, I start to think, you're the fucking God of War. You can jump over a small gate. You can swim around a small little rock. Okay? You're the God of War. So, to me, it starts to really frustrate me and break my suspension of disbelief when I have to do this. So, I mean, there are other reasons why I'm not crazy about God of War, outside of the main campaign. But I think overall, again, as a package, I think God of War is very good. I really enjoyed it. I still get, like, teary-eyed during moments in the campaign, especially the beginning and the end, I think are exceptionally strong. And I think Ragnarok has, I think God of War Ragnarok, this is where I'll say my predictions for God of War Ragnarok. I think it's going to have a weaker story compared to the first game, because I don't think it's quite going to have that personal angle to it, like, because they've already had the thing where Kratos and Atreus they bond. They finally start to understand one another as father and son, as human beings. And Kratos, develops a softer side throughout the game, to where by the end he stops calling him boy and starts calling him son or Atreus, and that's great. But I don't think Ragnarok is quite going to have that, and I think it'll have an interesting story. I think all the stuff with Freya and Thor and Atreus being Loki and all that, I think that will be interesting, but maybe not quite as interesting as the first game. And then talking about the things that I think are issues that I think are gonna hold over from the first game, because they are still gonna use that one-shot camera angle, that the technique, not angle, So I feel like all my issues with the game, as far as the navigation, as far as the tedious backtracking and the fast travel, is still gonna be there. Maybe a little bit less on the PS5, because the PS5 can load a lot quicker than the PS4 can. But that's the problem, is that the Ragnarok is being released on the PS4. So they can't push the boat out too far on designing it around the PS5's features, because it'll just make it unplayable on PS4. So that too, it's like, okay, well, for this being the big next sequel to God of War, it really feels like maybe a half step towards improvement. Not quite there, simply by the fact that they are going to be, you know, making this playable on a almost 10-year-old console. I mean, I really can't. I get it financially, I get it because they want more people to play this game, but it's like, come on, do what's best for the game. Take that shit away, take that PS4 requirement shit away, and let us just play it on the PS5. There are enough PS5s out in the wild, in my opinion, where you could justify making this an only PS5 title. I really do believe that. And it's the same thing with Horizon Forbidden West, where like Horizon Forbidden West, yeah, it's impressive on PS5, it looks great, the fast travel is insanely fast, but it still doesn't feel like the next big step forward because it's hamstrung by the PS4. It's not the same thing as like Returnal or Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart or Astro's Playroom or Demon's Souls, where it really feels like those are designed around the PS4, the PS5 and its capabilities. It's like, come on. Please God, I hope this is the last big game that they're gonna make for the PS4. Just please let this thing go. Let this PS4 shit go. I think God of War is going to be hamstrung by that. And that's sad because I feel like it should have been, especially considering this is going to be the conclusion of the Norse arc, I really feel like it should have been like the big show-stopping exclusive for the PS5 before it eventually comes to PC, which it will in like a year or so. I know it will. But it's not. It's hamstrung by the PS4, which is a shame. So, and then finally, I just want to reflect on how important this game was to the series as a whole, because I love God of War as a series. God of War might be my favorite PlayStation series out there. Maybe. Even before God of War 2018 came out. I love the original 3 games. I've actually never, I don't think I've ever played Chains of Olympus or Ghost of Sparta to completion, but I'll have to get around to those someday, because I still have my PS3, thankfully. And Ascension at the time, I remember when Ascension came out, and I remember playing it, and I remember thinking, oh, it's just, like, I'm kind of tired of this. Maybe I'd like it more now. Now that we've gotten the big shakeup for the franchise, I can go back and be like, oh, this wasn't too bad. This is pretty good. But at the time, I just felt like they were really starting to run out of ideas when it comes to using Greek myth. That multiplayer mode that came out for it was fine, but I didn't feel like it justified a fucking game being built around it. A single player game being built into it to justify a purchase. It was just like, like God of War Ascension was really like, okay, we need to start thinking about what to do next. And when God of War, when I first heard about God of War 2018, because they had the leaked art for it, and they talked about it openly that they were working on it, and that was a sequel set after God of War 3. I thought, okay, Kratos, you know, he's in Norse mythology, he's got an axe, he's got a beard. It's like, okay, well, we'll see. And then when they showed off the gameplay of it for the first time in 2016, I thought, okay, this could work. I understand there are people that are skeptical about it, but I thought, okay, this could work. This idea of him learning to be a better person, especially after going on his like mass murder rampage at the end of God of War 3. And when it came out, I was right. I was like, yeah, this works. Because the writing is so strong and because the performances are so good across the board, it really felt like they had injected new life into this series that I had written off as like, I don't think this should keep going. But they found a way to revitalize it and to make it its like own thing. And you know, despite the issues that I've mentioned with God of War 2018, I will forever be grateful to that game's existence because it brought back to life and to even higher status than before a series that I loved during my teenage years with the PS2 and the PS3. God of War 3 is the reason I bought a PS3 back in 2010. I finally got one after almost like 3 years, after more than 3 years of not bothering with it. So God of War is to me a system seller. So I am forever grateful to God of War 2018 for the things that it did for the series. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe. Let me know what you think about God of War 2018. Let me know if you're excited for Ragnarok or not. And as always, I'm Razorblade Mango. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Bye.